All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we've got a truly wild story for you. It's all about environmental transformation, but not in the way you might think. We're talking about a hopeless desert, a plan that seemed completely crazy, and, get this, an army of the most unlikely heroes you could ever imagine.
Okay, so let's just dive right in with a bit of a paradox. Check this out. In Australia, you've got 200 million rabbits, and they're seen as a total plague, right? A complete disaster. But then, over in China, they went and intentionally imported 4 million of them. Why? Well, because they didn't see a pest. They saw a partner.
So what gives? How can the very same animal be a total curse in one place and a blessing in another? The answer, it turns out, isn't really about the rabbit at all. It's about a pretty radical idea for solving what everyone thought was an absolutely impossible problem. And to really get our heads around this idea, we've got to meet the villain of the story. And that is the vast, relentless Kabuki Desert, a place that, had this really grim nickname, the Sea of Death.
Yeah, the Kabuki was basically a textbook case of desertification. That's the process that's threatening ecosystems all over the world. It's really just what happens when fertile land gives up, dies, and turns to sand. And in this case, man, that desert was spreading like an out-of-control disease.
And I mean, this so-called Sea of Death was just expanding at a terrifying rate. We're talking 500,000 acres of good, fertile land just gone, swallowed by sand every single year. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's bigger than a lot of major cities, just vanishing year after year.
Now, people tried to fight back, of course. Back in the 50s and 60s, there were these huge efforts, sand control stations, massive tree planting projects, but it just didn't work. The desert was simply too powerful. It really, truly seemed like a lost cause.
But then this local entrepreneur, a guy named Wang Wenbiao, he comes along. And his plan was so out there, people literally thought he was crazy. See, he didn't look at the desert as some enemy he had to conquer. No, he saw it as a system, something you could understand and actually work with. So his method was actually super clever and pretty simple. He basically made these little micro-environments. He'd arrange dried shrubs in these square shapes to act like tiny fences, protecting young willow saplings from those brutal winds. And these weren't just random trees either. Willows have these insanely deep roots that can snake down, sometimes 300 feet, to find water way, way below the sand. And for 3 years, believe it or not, this crazy plan actually worked. The trees were surviving. But you know how it goes, just when you think you've got it figured out, a whole new problem pops up. See, for these trees to be valuable for stuff like paper or furniture, you had to constantly prune the new shoots, and trying to do that by hand in the middle of a desert, well, that was just way too expensive and it pretty much threatened to kill the whole project.
So they needed a new solution. Something cheap, something efficient, and something that could pretty much run itself. And what they came up with? Well, absolutely nobody saw this coming.
They used rabbits. Yep, you heard that right. The very same creature that's a total pest in other parts of the world became the key to saving this desert. I mean, think about it. They needed a groundskeeper, a pruner, and a fertilizer machine all rolled into one. What they needed was a rabbit.
But it couldn't be just any old rabbit. Oh no, they specifically chose the Rex rabbit, and for 3 really good reasons. First, their fur is super soft and really valuable. Second, their absolute favorite food just happens to be those thin new shoots on the willow trees, the exact things that needed pruning. And third, well, they breed like rabbits, right? So you've got a workforce that's constantly replenishing itself. Okay, and this right here is where the absolute genius of this whole system becomes crystal clear. This wasn't just about planting trees anymore. This was about building a living, breathing economic engine right in the middle of a desert.
So what they created was this perfect, self-sustaining cycle. Okay, follow me here. The rabbits eat the new shoots, which is basically free pruning. This forces the tree's main trunk to grow thicker and more valuable. As the trees get stronger, their roots anchor the sand, locking in moisture and stopping erosion. Then, the rabbit waste, it enriches the sandy soil, turning it fertile. And get this, as a bonus, any undigested grass seeds in their waste sprout into new vegetation across the desert. It's this incredible loop where nature is literally doing all the heavy lifting.
Okay, so fast forward more than 30 years. What are the results? Well, to put it simply, they are absolutely staggering.
Get this, over 6,200 square kilometers of desert has been turned into green land. That's an area bigger than the entire state of Delaware.
We're talking about 1/3 of the whole Sea of Death that is now green and alive.
And this went way beyond just an environmental project. This was a massive investment in people. The Chinese government poured in $400 million to build new villages, create jobs. They were building a whole new economy, literally from the sand up.
And the result of that? 100,000 people. The lives of 100,000 people have been directly improved. They have new homes, new jobs, a real future in a place they once had to run away from, a place that used to be totally hopeless.
I mean, just look at this. It really shows the complete turnaround for the whole region. The name went from Sea of Death to ecological marvel. The land went from barren sand dunes to green pastures. The economy went from non-existent to supporting over 2,000 farms. People were fleeing, now they're thriving. And the average income, it went from less than zero to about $9,600 a year. Just incredible.
But wait, the story doesn't even end there. This whole thing is still evolving. The innovation didn't just stop with the trees and the rabbits. They thought, hey, this formula works, so let's apply it to next-gen tech.
Yeah, that core idea that you can create this perfect partnership between the economy and the environment, they took that and just ran with it. Enter the Jamla solar plant. This thing is a multitasking marvel. Of course, it produces massive amounts of clean energy, but the panels also provide shade which lets grass grow underneath. They act as a windbreak, reducing wind speed by half and fighting erosion. And how do they keep all that new grass in check? With an army of, you guessed it, rabbits, acting as little furry groundskeepers.
So a sea of death has literally become a sea of life, all powered by this perfect partnership between nature and human ingenuity. It's just such a powerful message, you know? It shows that sometimes the most complex problems don't need complex solutions. Sometimes the answer is elegant, simple, and based in nature.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to think about. If this kind of eco-economic model can completely transform a desert, what other impossible problems could it solve? I mean, with 40% of the world's land currently fighting desertification, the lesson from Kabuki might just be one of the most important stories of our time.